All right, so we'll start off with an introduction. What's your name and what honors course do you teach?
So I'm Lori Clune, a professor of history here at Fresno State, and I teach Honors 12 every fall.
And how long have you taught this course?
Gosh, it's been at least a decade, I believe. Yeah, certainly many years pre-COVID, and then through COVID, and then after. Yeah.
Why do you think Smittcamp Scholars will benefit from taking your course?
It's a great question because it's a great what we did with this course, like I said, about 8 or 10 years ago, was revise it so that it's reflective of the History 12, which is modern U.S. survey class, which is required of all Fresno State students have to take either 11 or 12. And so History 12 is U.S. history since 1877. But what the honors class and the honors program decided to do was make it so that it was U.S. in the world. So it's not just U.S. history, but contextualizing and putting it in a global context. And because I'm a diplomatic historian, that felt very good to me to go in that direction. And I enjoy it a lot because there's so much. I mean, Smittcamp students, they come in, they know a lot. They're very smart, lovely people to work with. But it's amazing what they don't know about U.S. history and U.S. foreign policy. And it's an honor to get to take them on that journey.
What is one thing you hope that Smittcamp Scholars will take away from your class?
I would love them to, I think two things. One, to not hate history. I think that's a big goal, right? History is just, the past and people doing weird stuff, and there's a lot of weird people and they do a lot of weird stuff, and countries are just a whole bunch of people, and so to have a sense of like, oh, this is interesting, right? It's not names and dates, it's why do these things happen and how do they happen and what does it say about us as humans on this planet, If they can also understand a bit more the role that the United States actually plays in the world, I think that's really helpful. Because I think when you're in the United States and you perhaps, and I know many Smittcamp folks get to travel, and I think that's essential because it lets them see the role that they play and kind of what the perspective is towards the United States, how they perceive our country. But through the course, we can problematize that and nuance that and explore that in ways that I think, frankly, it's really hard to do in high school.
What's your background in history?
So I got a bachelor's in history back in the 80s. My first major was costume design. I was a theater major, and then switched to history, which had always been a love of mine, I think, since I was a kid. And but it really wasn't until I had a female history professor that I thought it was even possible. And it might be shocking to students to think about it today, but I didn't meet a female historian until my junior year of college. That it was all men, predominantly white men, and I wasn't even sure that women could do this until I met this amazing person. And she encouraged me and helped me get into NYU, New York University, where I did my master's. Then I ultimately came out to California and taught high school for a while, had a couple of children, and then did my PhD as a much older student at UC Davis.
And what stemmed your interest in the field?
I think many humans are naturally curious, and it's just what is the thing that satisfies that. I ask a lot of questions and I want to find answers, and I am so fortunate to be in a job where, it doesn't, in many ways, doesn't even feel like a job. I get to spend my days reading as much as I can with all our teaching and obligations, but reading and exploring and understanding and helping to craft lectures or discussions or find readings to help students also understand, and that's I'm very fortunate that I get to do that. So I think for me it's constantly, but why? How did that happen? Answering those questions I think is I think if you remain eternally curious, you age slower. That's my theory.
Do you have any accomplishments or highlights from your career you're especially proud of?
I mean, getting a tenure track job in U.S. history is a huge accomplishment because we produce a lot of PhDs in history, and so I'm very proud to be the first one in my family to get a college degree. Proud to then go on and get a PhD. I never imagined that would be possible. It's still weird when people call me doctor. I still kind of flinch and think that can't possibly be me. I am very proud to finish my first book, published in 2016. That was a huge accomplishment that I'm delighted, and the fact that I still like the research and I appreciate the work that I did for it, and I think it still holds true 8 years later. I'm pretty proud about that. And then I think the opportunity to get to be interviewed for a documentary with Netflix meant that I could be the face and the voice, if you will, for so many folks who are trying to understand the complexities of the Cold War. And I have received emails from around the world, people reaching out, not just, complimenting me on what I said and the contribution I made, in however small, to that very large documentary, but saying how I helped them be interested and sparked a curiosity to understand the Cold War better. And that's just like teaching, but on a broader scale. So I'm very proud of that.
Do you have any ongoing research or projects you would like to share with us?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's always something, and it's the beauty of this job is that, if there's something that nags at you long enough, you go, yeah, I guess I have to research that. That's your passion. I will say during COVID, I felt the need to shift away from the Cold War just a little bit because it was challenging to my mental health. I think at times you can't be entrenched in nuclear war every day and not have that impact you. So studying nuclear conflict, and that became a bit more challenging. So shifting to looking at the history of games, which is a course that I teach just about every spring, and looking at U.S. history through that lens has been so interesting. I've learned so much, kind of pivoting from a diplomatic historian to a cultural historian, which is a very interesting and kind of scary thing to do. And now this new project of getting to co-author a book with my younger son on the history of video games in the United States meant more for folks who don't understand the industry or maybe don't play or don't. It's the largest cultural product on the planet, and I don't think serious historians grapple with it enough, and we want to make a contribution to that, and that's very exciting because there's nothing like being at this point in my career and trying to understand new things. It's daunting for sure, but there is a sense of like, well, I've written one book, so I should be able to handle this, but it's exhilarating, I think.
What is one piece of advice you have for your students?
God, it's hard to narrow down to one. I would say talk to professors. Most of us are really nice. Know that the university is set up for students. You are the most important people on this campus. It's not us. Right? We're here to help you. I wish I had reached out to professors more when I was in college. I think those relationships can be so helpful. Even just to have a person to talk to and share ideas, the stresses, and have a piece of chocolate and just sit down and relax for a minute and debrief on something or share research interests. And so I think reaching out to the faculty is something I would highly recommend, because that's what our office hours are for. It's delightful when somebody comes and says, hey, can I talk history for a minute? Like, oh yes, please do. Please sit down, have some chocolate, let's talk. This sounds great. So I'd say that, and then also taking advantage of opportunities here. I think Smittcamp students are really good about not only reaching out in terms of volunteering, but taking care of each other in the cohorts and helping folks say, oh, you have trouble with that bio class, let me help you. I think those personal relationships are really important. Trying classes you never thought you would want to take, Take bowling or swing dancing or something. Take advantage of the resources here. Go to the counseling center. Go to a big sporting event to see what that's like. I mean, you're only in college for a chunk of your life, and it's not a huge chunk. So taking advantage of all the opportunities is what I've encouraged my children, and I would certainly encourage students to do that.
And finally, do you have anything you'd like to share to maybe people who are interested in becoming a Smittcamp Scholar?
I will be honest. When my younger son applied to Smittcamp, I was hesitant. I will be very honest about this, because my idea was, you need to go away, right? Go away to college. And it's humbling to admit that he was right. That he was absolutely right. That this was the best opportunity for him, because he then used it as a springboard to an incredible graduate program. So fortunate. Now he's teaching grad classes at UC Santa Cruz. I mean, what I love about Smittcamp is these are some of the most amazing, intelligent people you will ever meet, who said, you know what, I'm gonna take advantage of this incredible gift, get this scholarship, and be able to have connections with faculty that you wouldn't have at larger institutions. He got into, let's say, UC Berkeley. Okay, so you go to Berkeley or you go to Fresno State. In your head, you go, obviously, slam dunk, you go to Berkeley, but he would not have gotten what he got here. Because at Berkeley, you don't meet those professors for a couple of years. You're taught by TAs. It's a whole different situation. Here, I'm talking to freshmen the minute they get here. I can talk to them about my research. I can talk to them about how we publish. I'm sure the same thing is happening across the campus in science and math and computer science and political science. I mean, it's happening everywhere. And I think because it's a smaller space where Smittcamp kids are treated incredibly well, because they have access to all kinds of things. I mean, you are a president's scholars. You walk into the president's office and say, I want this. Not a lot of students feel that empowered. So I think it's an amazing opportunity to get an incredible education, get connections to faculty that can springboard into post degrees, and save a little money in case you need to spend that when you're in your graduate work. But I again was hesitant, and I think it was absolutely the best program for him, and I am delighted he went in that direction.